When you think of AI, you think of robotics, you think of autonomy, you think of everything else. And you've got, this old curmudgeon here that goes, well, I got to physically go stand in an office, otherwise I'm not going to get anything done. I do see the world changing. I do see, the decisions of how I manage. Absolutely, I'm going to be replaced by, a very complicated AI system that will do much better than I can. I was able to look and say, the best days of retail furniture are behind me. There is no way that the data is not showing it's going to get better. Brick and mortar is not going to get better. Everything related to this is shifting away towards, multi-billion-dollar organizations, and not these, even doing a couple $100 million is, your small potatoes.
Hi, I'm Brian Wish, and welcome back to the One Away Show. Today's guest is Jay Steinback, former CEO of his family's 100-year-old business, passionate leader, and someone who's walked the high-wire act of balancing legacy with personal growth. This is a story about growing up fast, stepping back bravely, and reimagining success on your own terms. We explore what it's like to be handed the reins early, how to lead through difficult transitions, and the quiet courage it takes to rebuild a life when you no longer fit the mold you once lived in. Let's get into it. Jay, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and I'm excited to do this with you. So Jay, what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
Well, we just went through about a dozen. So I've had a number of, I'd say, life events, in my careers and whatnot. So, let's start with, kind of the big one, which is, transitioning, to me from a fourth generation family business operator, into how I, kind of began that recreation process, after that phase of my life ended, which, I was born into, and, it's all my parents knew and my grandparents. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd love to dive into that to start. So tell us about the business. From what I can tell, it seems like it's the furniture business I saw on your LinkedIn. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's about as boring as you can get. So I was born into a multi-generation, family business of retailers. So furniture and everything else related to there. We were in multi-states, dozen plus, large, 50 to 60,000 square foot boxes, around the various MSAs. We were turning, approximately 100,000 clients a year or deliveries a year. So, it was, extremely busy, but it was very old tech. When I first entered that business, really kind of getting my feet wet, and the sales floor, it was, running on AS 400s. And this is in the late 90s. And AS 400s, or 80s. So, already kind of backwards technology. And so as I kind of progressed, over the years, went away to college, came back, and spent time in the business, really everything began focusing on like, how do I migrate this, from my grandfather's company to my father's company to my company. And it's a really long path that requires, a lot of insights, a lot of lessons and learnings. And so I took it very seriously. I full time. That's what I did from the age of really 16 until about the age of 35 was, full time family business until I was able to exit.
One incredible longevity for your first job, more or less. Family business, it was there. You fourth generation. You said. There are ways to transform or augment, bring things, sounds like, to a more modern world. Was it what you wanted to do, or do you not know enough to know if it was what you wanted to do?
It's a really, it's a very valid question. And I will say I just never was into the furniture part of it, which is pretty hard. I love business. I love the technology. I love sales. I love people, HR, marketing. Like I always said, you could replace the cogs, the various junk on the floor or whatever it was, and I wouldn't care. Like what replace the furniture with cars or widgets or whatever it was. And everything was a process. There was just a process to everything. And the way my father saw things was it started with what's the object that you're selling, and then everything worked outwards from there. I had a very different approach where I saw everything as a system, a process, and a procedure, and it was interchangeable. Like I didn't care what color the furniture was. I had no idea what the styles were. I went to furniture market all the time, so it was very, very, integrated into the entire, ecosystem of furniture. But I didn't care about the base product in any way, shape, or form. I just needed to make sure that it came from whatever factory it was being built at, that it made its way through international logistics. It was properly marketed. We had the salespeople on the floor. We were able to collect payment. We were able to manage delivery and then deal with client expectations, after the sale and get them back in and continue to grow and scale. But I didn't care if it was a blue couch, pink couch, red chair, like none of that really mattered. And so that was kind of the big differentiator, I think, between me and previous generations, is I wasn't a furniture guy.
Or like, something what you're saying is, you were like the Tim Cook of Apple, where your dad was the Steve Jobs of Apple, and maybe Tim Cook ran the thing better, but you didn't care too much about the product per se.
That was exactly it. And I think it was one of those things that at one point when I was 30 years old, I took over as CEO, and kind of started forcing my dad off into retirement, who had, been doing this since he was my age as well. So he had a 50+ year long career. And so I did my best to start forcing him and everyone else in my family off into retirement and doing the roll up of buying all the properties and just saying, look, everything's going to come under me. Needs to be one boss, there needs to be one source and one run at it. And so, that was years. That took years of family planning and lawyers and fights and conversations. And, in the meantime, you got the economy doing what it's doing. And you have, there's so many facets when you're talking about retail that just, doesn't matter how good of a year you're having, the longshoremen could go on strike and now you can't get product. So it's a really complex industry, and it took a long period of time, but it was actually very helpful for me to understand. At that point, I had never really done a major purchase or sale. So I had a lot of things that had occurred in my career. I had done a number of startups at that point already. I've done a bunch of VC work and investing, but I had never kind of like said, I need to start buttoning up this company and preparing it to be sold off in a way. So that was a really interesting lesson for me.
And sounds like a fascinating education, front row seat into something massive at 30 years old or 31. So
yeah,
incredible. When you took it over as CEO, did you know that, 5 years down the road, was that kind of the grand plan to eventually exit off? And if so, did you communicate that to, your family as you were taking it over?
Yeah, I think it was very obvious to a number of my family members and people that were close around me that this was not going to be my thing. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I always appreciated running it, but I was running it more for, the team members, the staff, the employees, my coworkers, than I really was for myself. And when I say that, meaning that like when you have a business that's, at that point had been, 95 something years old, I wasn't the only multi-generational employee. There was multiple, across all these various venues that we had, second and third generation, members that worked there. So it truly was like a family. And I think that this point that we always would say to each other is you spend more time at work with your coworkers than you do at home with your family. And so we really did focus in, very heavily on that culture. Like it's got to be a good culture. It's got to be, you have to enjoy who you're working with. You have to enjoy what you're doing. Because there's just too many other jobs that people can take. And so when you have parents recommending that their children and their grandchildren, come work for you, like that's a badge of honor. I think that a lot of smaller businesses don't get credit for.
Wow. Interesting. Interesting perspective, opposed to maybe looking at that as as a negative or a kind of a thing that you just have to do. You're saying, hey, like this is a positive of what we can bring people into.
Yeah.
When you look back at the family business experience, what would you say are some of maybe the non-obvious, extremely difficult things that kind of you saw that are in the family business dynamics, right? That maybe are any more traditional business that don't have all the family ties?
Yeah, I think, you have a lot more feelings
Yeah.
And I think is the nicest way to put it. That there is insights, there is identity related to this that you don't have. Like there's some people that go, I worked for this company for 20, 30 years. This is the only job I've ever had. That's all I've ever known. That's one thing. When it's literally your family's name on the front of a building, and I'm talking about like I think that name should come down. Like that's an identity issue, and so I think that it's very challenging to look at it's technically everything's a large lift. Like there's no one that just goes replacing a 30-year-old phone system is easy. There's probably a bunch of IT people like, oh, we do it every day. Of course you do. But the pain and suffering of getting to the point of what I need to do it, and then I'm actually doing it, and then moving forward with it, those are minor decisions that's going to happen, whatever the case is. When you're saying like, hey, I'm taking your name off of your entire identity, why everyone in high school knew who you were, or everyone for your entire life has known this is you and what your family does. Those are challenges that can take years. So there's no consultant that can make you feel better about those types of things.
Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. It's got to come from within and over time. And
Yeah.
a lot that's packed into that. Yeah. No, I appreciate the perspective. And let's say you as yourself, as you kind of grew up in this, you said 16 to 35. When you kind of look back on that, I know you've had like a pretty dynamic career since, but when you look back on that 16 to 35, what are some things perspectives or lessons that ultimately you think shaped you, right? That you kind of don't think you would have had without being in that dynamic for so long?
Yeah, this is where I think we get into the mental illnesses related to work, kind of work. And that's, I think, the number one thing is I don't know how to not work. I'm always building, I'm always changing. And so that's when you're an active CEO, and I was one of the ones with a very flat org chart. All department managers, everyone just report to me. Like I'd rather deal with it, and manage a whole lot of people than have, too many layers of which I'm unaware of things happening. And it's not that I didn't trust people's decisions. That's just how I've always operated. There's always a project that was being worked on. There was always something that had to be done. And so when I kind of look back, on it, I have large projects that I can say I worked on, and large accomplishments that I was able to get done. But I think that kind of the biggest lessons across the board is just relentless forward motion. No one is going to help you. No one's going to do it. I don't care what the consultant says. I don't care what that third party. I have been let down in the worst ways by 6-figure plus consultancies or integration experts or anything else. And at the end of the day, the one thing I've learned is if your leadership is not an expert on the change that's going to happen in your company, then you shouldn't do it. If you think you're going to hire somebody that's going to come in and they're going to build some new computer system and it's all going to just work and be magic, just stop and stick with what you have. I can say I have thrown away $1 million+ in my career of experts' opinions and websites and integration and development and API stuff that they've done that was utterly useless. And I've gotten pretty good now about, as soon as I kind of get the sniff that there's something wrong with one of these guys, I cut the project and move on. I mean, it's nauseating how much money I've thrown away on experts.
Yeah, it's I think there's a whole part of that is just educate the buying education process, and sniffing everything out, like you said, or backdoor reach outs and all the things you got to do to see if you're being sold BS. So yeah, good to know. Now you brought up, you've always been building, you've always been kind of your hands forward motion, relentless forward motion. That's a good term. But with that, right, when you have family, kids, all the things that can, like probably hard to be present, hard to, prioritize all those things just because of the natural chaos. I'd love to understand a little bit about, how you were, what family looked like to you at the time, kind of like just to a little bit more on the personal side of things as you've been relentlessly building throughout your life.
Yeah, so I'm 46 now, so it's been an interesting career, and I've had a number of changes since exiting the family business, almost a decade ago. And so, looking now, I'm finishing up my second divorce. I've got two amazing teenage, boys that I love and I adore, and they're always, they live with me and they're thrilled. I'd say that I kind of use the word mental illness around to work. It's just I can't turn it off. I grew up, and I think it comes from a 7-day retail operation. We worked on holidays. In fact, it's like you're not taking off Thanksgiving because that's one of the biggest sales days there are, and you're definitely working the day after, and that weekend's going to be busy as well. So, I don't like associate like, oh, it's here comes this this break, and I'm going to take some rest off. Oh, it's Saturday, I'm going to take the day off. I mean, I do not have retail operations. My businesses do not operate in any way, shape, or form on weekends. And I can promise you, I'm in my office, in a physical office. I show up to at least 6, if not 7 days a week. That takes a big toll on marriages, on relationships, on a number of other things. And that doesn't mean that I don't love somebody, or doesn't mean I don't care about my family. I, the anxiety levels of kind of how I operate means that if I don't, I have to do these things. It's not an OCD deal. It's just, if I'm not innovating, if I'm not growing, if I'm not scaling, someone else is, and that's going to hurt me and hurt my family more than anything else. So those are a little bit of kind of the way to look at it's. You can't overwork, and you can't lose sight of those family values.
Yeah. My friend tweeted yesterday, it's like, I'd never invest in a founder who doesn't work weekends. Which is like, someone wrote, oh, that's so 2019. But like, I mean, to be honest with you, it's, that's why social media can be just terrible. It's like, oh, well, actually, like really dedicated, sharp people, like they're not putzing around on Saturdays watching Netflix and going to the movies. Like they're probably like cranking on the thing they care about. So I actually think that the rhetoric is refreshing. Maybe it's coming back like a good pair of jeans. So I appreciate you. It sounds like just like who you are. Like you're gonna build, and you enjoy.
And I think it's one of those things, because you're a podcast for high performing people, and they want to do good, and it is hard. I'll say that I've my second marriage wasn't because I worked too much. That was for different issues, but at the same sense, it just gives me another reason in my head to say, well, I should pour more time into work. I can spend a few more hours at the office. I literally just, when we were going to start record this, my son's at home, and he's been sick, went home sick for today, and I'm like, you good? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. I said, okay, because I got to work late tonight. And he understands it. He doesn't even think twice about it. And he's like, okay, cool. I'm going to order pizza and make himself happy. And so, he's 17. He's fine. I promise everyone he's okay. But it's in my head, I'm a Gen X, we're Gen X has taken over the White House. So you kind of see how we all operate, and there's never enough time. And I think that as you kind of approach, I'm in my mid 40s right now, which is where a bunch of the current administration is. We're freaking out thinking, oh my God, we're almost 50. Like, holy crap. Like, what have we really accomplished? Have we really, hit our goals? Because, I also, my grandfather, he worked, he retired and he passed away 2 weeks later. Like, he worked until he was done. And my father, I said, I'm not going to allow it to happen, which is why I bought the company and forced him into retirement. And I look at myself and I say, well, I think I'll only work for 10 more years. But then I keep laughing and I go, there's no way. Like, it's such a drug to like accomplish those tasks and to build and to scale. And my thing has always been, I like to give people an opportunity. There's nothing that's more exciting. Like there's years I don't get paid because I wanted to staff up. I wanted to give somebody else a raise. I wanted to do, to grow a company in a slightly different way. And so I always look at the easiest way to grow and scale is self-deprecation. Like, I can take it. I can handle the stress. I can handle the lack of pay. Nobody else could. So it becomes the old saying, it's very lonely at the top. That's why you see YPOers and a number of other us kind of like hang out together. Because if you say these things to any other person, they'd be like, just take the money and go home. go home to your family. What do you need more for? What do you need to do these things? And I don't do, or I don't build companies that don't scale people as well. And I think that that's, kind of the other side of things that I just enjoy is, creating opportunity. That was one of the things that was instilled to me by my grandfather. And he kept a company running through the Great Depression, through World War II, through a variety of really, incredibly hard times. And he just always said it's all about people. It's all about who you surround yourself with.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds remarkable. I mean, it sounds like, maybe you have a lineage of your family, just like they've shown the way of like, this is the way. And they're fighters, and you've clearly fed off that. It's probably in your DNA, a little bit. My grandfather, just as a side note, I'm going to come back around with some questions.
Oh, yeah.
He was a, wild weasel in Vietnam, and he did like the most dangerous job. So he flew in to get shot at, and then bombers came in behind him. He lost a bunch of friends, but I mean, like warrior, and like, he was worked till very late in life. And then when he died, it was cleaning out his house. It's over there. I just moved, but something about like, if you're the lead dog, the view, something about being not being the lead dog and the view never changing, in a sense where it's like, for you, it sounds like you really enjoy like controlling the view and kind of seeing that things come together. And it's like, why give that up? It's like you relish that. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we've all seen this. We've all seen the high functioning, CEOs and entrepreneurs that take that check and walk, and then they're bored, and it's very hard to start back from zero. I mean, I still today have employees that have followed me through multiple companies, that just stick with me. I mean, a back office company, books, accounting, legal, and everything else. They're concerned just about as much as me is what are we selling, because the processes don't change, the trust levels don't change, the playbook doesn't change. You swap out sales teams, you swap out marketing and a variety of other things, but that's the other side of this is like core business, which I think is one of the things that has just been entirely deprecated in today's society, is that people don't know how to run an office. And in fact, a lot of these companies don't even have an office. They don't even think about culture or anything else. Just go, everyone should have a nice life and they should, work from home. But I will tell you, I have seen nothing but failures from outsourced HR, nothing but failures from, outsourced accounting and everything else. This is your business. These are core functions that I don't care how good, what their pedigree is and how many companies they look at. If this is your business and this is what you do, then you need to be really good at all aspects of it. And that's going to include accounting. That's going to include, IT and support and everything else. And so I always have said, if it's a core competency, if our business will stop running because of this, then we should be doing it in-house. And I'm not saying there's not really good outsourcing companies and everything else, but I can promise you, I've never seen anyone care like an employee that knows from top to bottom where they fit in the chain. They're able to integrate and help along the ways, to make something successful. When they're outsourced or they're not on site, or it's not every company's on site, but you're just not a team and around there. You're friendly, you're helpful, but you're not a team.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's like to a point too. You're like extreme ownership and not letting like some of the most important things put in the hands of somebody else, because you're going to learn some hard lessons. I mean, I've learned some hard lessons doing exactly what you said. Now, again, we've a big learning journey, but I think to your point, it's like you gotta have control over every number or.
Well, you actually just said the word. So Jocko's book, Extreme Ownership, is some people have like, if you want to work for somebody, you got a dozen books you got to read. I just say read one book, the Extreme Ownership book. That's it.
Triggered the book. It's a good book.
Yeah, it is fabulous, and the concepts are very simple. And I will say that if you have a team that can function off extreme ownership, there's nothing left to do. Everyone wants to do their piece. There is no really head of the pie or head of the chiefs don't exist. I hate titles. But the challenges, to get back to your core question, like the challenges of building a team and gaining trust. It requires something I think a lot of people don't understand, and that's the word no. And no is a very acceptable answer in a lot of cases, of which doesn't get used, as often as they should.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're probably a lot of people want to people please, even leaders of their team. So yeah. Totally. This is great. I mean, I want to keep going. I've never asked a question like this. I'm going to ask them kind of two questions, kind of back to back, and then I'll kind of transition here. But I'm noticing some patterns with you in a good way, and so and this is probably a hard question or a hard question to answer. But if you just kind of sharing, as you've been sharing, like if you could have like full control for the rest of your life, or like consistent achievement for the rest of your life, like what would be more important to you?
It's a really good question. I struggle. I've done consulting for companies from tens of millions to billions. And what I find is I have zero job satisfaction if I'm accomplishing my tasks, and my department or my piece of the pie is winning, and the overall org is failing. And I find that to be a big challenge, of which when I sold the family business to a private equity firm, I had a tail. I had, I'm going to stay on for a couple of years and help them do the transition and everything else. And so I went from this, like, I know every single person's name in this company, 350 something employees, to now we're part of a, 5,000 employee organization. And when I would meet with, the CEO up top, and, I'm technically reporting to this guy, and he's saying things, and I go, I know you're wrong. I can tell you why you're wrong. And I understand that that's what you want to try. But if I go grab 3 people out of your warehouse, or I grab 2 of your delivery drivers and bring them in here, they're experts and they're going to tell you you're wrong. And when someone isn't receptive to like what is best for the organization, and they're favoring that in terms of ego, like I just say I fail. It is so unsatisfactory to be winning battles and losing the war, that to in a really roundabout way with your question, I don't want to say I have to have control, because I've worked for some smart people as well. So I did my best to not answer your question, but give some explanations as to why. It's an impossible question, but it's a great one.
Yeah, I knew it was a hard question, and as you've been talking, and like, I mean, I actually figured you'd maybe come around to an answer like that, in the sense where if you have control over the right parts, like the byproduct long term will probably be more achievement. But if you kind of seek the achievement, I think you said it well, like it's about ego. It seems like, I mean, the way you think about control is like responsibility and ownership of the things that matter most. And also, like, if that doesn't work, like, all right, like we'll go to the next thing, but I want to be in control of that outcome. So yeah, very interesting. And then the second question I had is, you talked about your 2 relationships, and I mean, just from personal perspective, I haven't married yet, but it's been a pretty intentional process. I've always had the question in my mind, like, you want to date someone on the field, like a woman is like doing it, right? Because of like how lonely it is at the top, or like someone on the sidelines is a great cheerleader. And like, maybe you're 2 relationships in, I'm just curious, like, on the field, on the sidelines, like, what's your perspective? Maybe is there a hybrid?
Yeah, so I've done both. So my first wife was absolutely a fabulous stay-at-home mom. She raised the boys and did everything there. But we just didn't talk much work, and it a number of things from that perspective. My second wife, we were business partners together. We formed companies together. We were kind of. I was CEO, she was president. We were, working together every day. And I'll just say that I'm the worst person to ask on how to make this work, because I couldn't. At the end of the day, there was distance that grew between my first wife and I, and there was friction and just horrible ill will between my second wife and I, because she's trying to get some initiative done, and I'm going, I understand, but you're not seeing, what I'm seeing. And so let's try to come around this. And so it was a lot of hard ways to do it. I know a lot of people that have been successful, with the business partners together. I feel like you need to kind of separate church and state. Is kind of my new approach right now. Is you want a cheerleader, you want a partner, you want a life partner, someone that's able to support you and understand you. But it's not control is a hard thing to give up on anything. For me.
Sure. Maybe you need a good cheerleader who can also be.
Yeah, I need someone to help me, understand this stuff. It's I'm in constant counseling over like how do I manage my dating life, which is non-existent, because I work and I launched, just recently, like I said, I had what am I going to do? I had a little free time, and I launched an entire new company in a sub 30-day sprint. So 3 weeks, 7 days a week, 100 hours a week, went from zero to grand opening last night. So, yep.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I was going to get to what's ahead, but you kind of beat me to it. So thanks for doing my job for me. I mean, tell us about the company.
Oh, so this is literally just everyone's got a side hustle. So I have this building that was filled with a bunch of real estate companies that my second wife and I had built. It was vacant after she and her companies left. So we turned it into a YWork, we call it YWork, a YPO and EO co-working space. So saw a need, fill a need, and then there was enough people in St. Louis that basically said, I don't have an office, I'm tired of working from home, or I don't have any peace at the office. I need somewhere that I can come work a couple days a week and have the facilities and everything else. And so we went from, we sent out a very quick little survey, who's interested. We got critical mass sign up, and then it was a 3-week sprint to turn the space over and get it launched. We launched last night. We've already hit critical mass, and we're set up for the next few years. And now that's done. So now I've taken that, I built it, I had control over the process. I've handed it off to a concierge that's going to manage, a host that's going to manage the space, and I got to go build some other companies. So it was kind of a fun side project.
Nice. I feel like you're the Elon of St. Louis.
No, I just have to say, that dude, it was a funny joke because we had to build the software to manage this thing. And, the SaaS company was saying it takes about 45 days to launch it. And I sent to my partners, I said, if Elon can audit the entire government in a long weekend, I think I can, I can get this figured out. But at the end of the day, high performers like that, the Elons of the world, and the Larry Ellisons, the before him, and some of these other ones, my God, are they inspirational? To truly understand the limits of what can be done, because a lot of people just work 9 to 5, and then they wonder why they're not getting ahead in life. And I think the thing that I've found the most is the 9 to 5 is the bare minimum. And I respect people that have made a great career working, 40 hours a week. I've never been able to find a way to make it work. I work a base 60, and then it depends on what I'm doing, that year, that I kind of scale up and down if I'm traveling. And so I just kind of look and see, some of these incredibly inspirational people doing for no reason. There's no more money Elon needs. There's no there's why are they doing that? And I do feel at least somewhat comforted that there's others with this illness. But it's helpful to kind of watch and see from afar that it's okay, focus on first principles, which is so easy to get away from, so easy to forget first principles. And I think that too often people get excited about the mission and forget about what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it's well said. It's well said. There was a podcast I was listening to with Alex Hormozy, and you know that name?
I recognize that. I can't remember. I can't place where he's from.
I mean, incredible entrepreneur, and Tom Byler, or I forget. And she was talking about people who admire him, or he admires Elon, and he's accomplished those ways just so much. So, anyways, cool to see your perspective. So, what is the theme on why the Y code word? What's the Y by office? What's it called? Why?
What? So we called it why work, with the question mark. And so, there's we work and then everything else. And we go, so why work? The question mark. And it truly becomes, why do you work? And so we have a wall out there and it says, why work, with the question mark, and people put, various things on there. So there's, pictures of people's kids, there's yachts, there's jets, there's cars, there's homes, there's all sorts of things. And, there's got to be a reason why you show up every day. No one has any job satisfaction for just, clocking in and clocking out so that they can, exist. High performers need a target. You have to. If you don't have a target, then you can put in a lot of horsepower. And I see this all the time. I'm sure you see it. I mean, I see people with insane amounts of capabilities that they can put in 100-hour weeks working on nothing that is meaningful in any way, shape, or form. So, the concept of traction, of an actual ROI, like those are the big deals. And so, the question of why work, like why is someone going to, leave their house and drive here every day, is a really interesting, perspective. And it also creates kind of that collaborative, like we're all trying to do these things. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to scale. And I think that for this, where it's kind of like everyone's got their 10,000 hours, like that's a big deal. The 10,000 hours can't be, I don't care how good AI is. I don't care how much, much you're reading or everything else. 10,000 hours is a lot of mistakes, errors, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get there.
No, I love it. I mean, I love the name for a reason. I mean, it's got a much more philosophical way of like, what's the purpose of it all? And in general. So you have, from what I saw as well, you have another company called Why Whales in the block.
Yeah. So Why Whales is that was launched, really around the concept of how do CEOs and entrepreneurs around the world, how do we attack the Web3? How do we understand cryptocurrencies, blockchain technologies, smart contracts? Really, AI is included in there. So to me, I believe that a CEO, a founder, an owner, whatever the case is, you're only going to be able to make as good of decisions as you understand. And one thing that I saw, because I've been passionate about the Web3 space for a long time, was that there was so many bad consultancies. There were so many bad companies saying to do stupid, horrible things with the technology that I said, we just have to educate. Because I'm not going to build a consultancy that's going to, take over the world. But if I can educate hundreds and hundreds and really at this point, thousands of people on, how should you think about the technology as it relates to business? Should you launch a coin and forget all the basics of KYC, AML, OFAC compliance and all the rules and regulations of your country? No, you shouldn't. I don't care what the upside is. Like, you're putting yourself at risk. So we've really done a good job of taking and talking about the philosophical side of the upgrades and the benefits of tokenization, blockchain, things like Bitcoin and everything else. So they understand it, so that when they go and their CTO or consultancy or a marketing company comes and says, here's what they want to do, they understand how to have that conversation. And they're not just saying, yeah, of course I want to sign off on this bright, shiny object because you've got a great client list and you've done a bunch of these other ones. So that's been kind of a lot of what Why Whales was designed was, let's teach the largest whales on the planet, how and why, Web3 is coming and why they need to start thinking about it from a core perspective, not as a kind of an ancillary thing we may let the marketing department play with.
If you're a founder looking to grow without raising capital or giving up control, Relent is built for you. Founded by entrepreneurs who've scaled without outside funding, Relent helps companies find and retain talent, lower operational costs, and reinvest in growth. We've hired nearly 10 team members through Relent and streamlined our entire cost structure, freeing up capital to put toward what matters most. Even small teams can set up offshore operations quickly, compliantly, and without heavy infrastructure. With deep expertise in the India-US corridor, Relent combines cultural fluency with operational rigor and guides everything from team design to long-term scaling. Grow on your terms and start with Relent. To learn more, visit relent.team/arcbound.
Yeah, interesting. So what I'm hearing you say is like, there's probably like a deep interest for you to educate yourself and build community of people, education insights in, the space to kind of really make accessible for other people to understand, so everyone wins long term. Is that something?
Well, exactly. So just the same as you're doing, I've recorded about 300 various podcasts on the topics. So, just like you, I get introduced to a lot of, really incredible people all around the planet. that want to pick my brain and introduce themselves. And I kind of said, that's great, but I'm going to record it, and it's going to be in the form of a podcast. And it kind of took off. And we were averaging between 5,000 to 50,000 views on some of the nerdiest stuff you get, like regulation technologies and fintech integrations, like super nerdy stuff. But our clients were, CEOs, CTOs, C-level executives that were trying to understand how to even have a conversation. What's the language that they need to speak? And I think that's really one of the things that I've focused on for a long time, is being very selfish of like, I'm getting information out of you while we're talking, because I'm curious, how you're operating and what you're doing. But yeah, to me, it's shared education is the only way to go.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I can see, I've kind of see how you operate a little bit. It's, you catch the wind of something and you just do it. And, it's inspiring. It's the way to be. I definitely gravitate towards that. Given how you do things and the way you're looking at, what's ahead, if I said to you, like, Jay, why work for the next 10 years, no pun intended, like, what are you looking at? Like, what's exciting to you? What's interesting? Kind of what's next?
Yeah. So it's very interesting. In my 20s, it was just about, building a family, providing for the family and everything else. In my 30s, it was like, hey, let's figure out what's next in life. And now I'm kind of going like, hey, 10 to 15 years, I want to pretend that I can be done. But it's also, I'd say right now, I'm recognizing that I'm on the wrong side, of the learning curve. When I was coming up and I had the time and energy and everything else, to just absorb information, it was much easier in my younger. Like I did the Web 1 conversion. Like my company had no technology. It was AS400s and Oracle 8 databases and green screen, POS systems with dot matrix, like fax machines everywhere. Like, no, there was a single computer with an AOL dial-up account, and I just understood the stuff. I was just fluid with it, and I just go, I'm going to build an email server. I'm going to build computers, and I just did all that. Was one of my first jobs was kind of that tech upgrade for this large company, which is why I came to be so technical. Now I'm really understanding. I'm starting to see how hard it is for me to adapt. And my parents, they were like, why do you need this stuff? You can accomplish these same tasks this way and this way and this way. They just didn't see where it was going. And clearly I was right and whatnot. But, now I'm watching the next generation come up, and I'm struggling to understand some of the things that they do. And I'm going, 10 more years. I don't know, I don't know how I can survive in the business world. When you think of AI, you think of robotics, you think of autonomy, you think of everything else. And you've got, this old curmudgeon here that goes, well, I got to physically go stand in an office. Otherwise, I'm not going to get anything done. I do see the world changing. I do see, the decisions of how I manage. Absolutely. I'm going to be replaced by, a very complicated AI system that will do much better than I can. And so I really look and say, to me, I think that there is an end date that's coming for me much sooner than I want it, based on, really what we're seeing now. And so that's where I really want to align myself with is having that smooth transition out versus that hard cut where suddenly no one wants to, get their horse buggy repaired. No one's interested, anymore in, a switchboard company in a digital era. And so I really am looking at going, the days of a CEO are going to end. The days of a lot of the things that we do are absolutely going to be replaced. And so I'm trying to just, right now, that's my biggest thing, is what's next and how do I gracefully exit the workforce.
Interesting. So when you say, can I unpack that a little?
There we go.
When you say gracefully exit the workforce or gracefully exit what I'm doing now, it's more like, hey, and by the way, I totally see what you're saying. I think, hey, with the new electricity that's here in the world, I'm not going to need to. The things that I'm doing now, just it's going to be easy to kind of replace myself. So instead of just kind of hanging on to a slow death, what I'm hearing you say is what can I position myself in front of, and then not just educate myself, but position myself as things kind of get underway to say, hey, like, these are some of the things that I can be involved in as the world unfolds, because right, is like what are some of those opportunities, as opposed to just hanging on to being a manager or being a leader.
Yeah. To answer your question in a longer way, I think that this is where, true, top of the funnel, you've got to reject reject social nonsense. You have to be able to cut through the noise and focus on the signal and really understand where the world's going from a macroeconomics point of view, which is not what a lot of people do. Like I have no idea I don't even know who played in the Super Bowl. I have no concept, and people can love it and that's entirely great. I was into it years ago. I no longer find value to that, or soap operas or TV shows or anything else. So I kind of really watch all of these things. And what that allows you to do is have an educated guess about what 10 to 15 years looks like. And so what I can say going back is I remember making a prophecy a long time ago when I had two young kids, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and they were just little bitty. And the conversation of cars was coming around. And so this is in the, first one was born in 2007. Second one is in 2011. And so somewhere in like that 2013 era, as literally as Tesla is coming up, I said, I don't believe that my oldest will ever drive a gas powered car. And I don't think my youngest will ever drive a car. And the reality of that prediction that long ago, and it was written down and I signed it because somebody said there's no way, that's bullshit. They've been saying that since the 60s. It's going to be happening. So a 17-year-old, and he could have easily had a Model 3. He chose to go for the Jeep, and I endorse that. Didn't go for the electric Jeep, but it went for the Jeep. But my youngest is 13, and I drive a Tesla. I see the autonomy of it. I see the robotaxi coming down the pipeline. And so in 3 years, I think that it's truly a choice. Does he want to drive or not? And so, fast forward to, where your question is, I think you really have to look and see the writing on the wall. I was able to look and say that the best days of retail furniture are behind me. There is no way that the data is not showing it's going to get better. Brick and mortar is not going to get better. Everything related to this is shifting away towards, multi-billion-dollar organizations, and not these, even doing a couple $100 million is, your small potatoes. And so now I'm kind of looking and seeing, what is the most prevalent technologies today. It has to do with kind of the replacement of the financial technology system. So I think that all the infrastructure of banks, all the securities, like everything that we're seeing is just going to be, Swift is dead, everything, like all that stuff. That's what I work on. Like that's all gone. I think the concept of, a lot of professions, legal, everything else is going to be replaced by artificial intelligence in a variety of manners. Because the big difference is when it's insurable. Right now, it's not insurable. And so when you kind of really look from the larger perspective of what AI is, it tells you every time you return a search, that, hey, we're not a lawyer. Hey, we're not this. And if you screw up, we're not going to help you. So you still have to go hire that law firm. The law firm is insured and bonded, and there's, various things, audits that they go through to make sure that they're compliant. And the day that somebody launches, lawyer.ai, and it's fully insured, and it is licensed and bonded, and you're going to get just as good of interactions as you would with a physical lawyer. I think that's the day that everyone starts to worry. And so, my job is dealing with email triage, hiring, scaling, looking for opportunities, business development, everything else. I don't think we're 10 years off from that being, a similar task. And if a company can say, I can ensure these decisions, that's the key word.
I mean, 10 years, and that sounds like 3 years.
Yeah. Well, and it's gonna go fast. I mean, we just saw, I think 2 days ago, Elon said, that we're on the event horizon of singularity. That's a real deal. That's, the ability to upload your consciousness, whatever that means. We don't have long enough on this podcast to define, but that's a major game changer.
Yeah.
So.
Jay, this has been riveting, so stimulating. You crushed it. It felt like you crushed it from the questions, and I appreciate you taking the time to educate us on your life, your journey, what's ahead, and what we should be worried about when it all comes crashing down. So, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, fabulous, Brian. Thank you so much. And again, anybody ever has any questions, you know how to find me.
Thanks for listening to the One Away Show with Jay Steinback. Jay's story is a powerful reminder that the weight of legacy doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a foundation. And sometimes the strongest move a leader can make is stepping away from the thing that everyone expects them to stay in. What stood out to me is Jay's honesty, his willingness to talk about loss, not just in business, but in identity, and how he's rebuilt his life with more presence, purpose, and clarity. If this episode resonated with you, pass it along to someone walking their own path of rediscovery. And as always, we are back every Tuesday and Friday with more stories like this. Until next time, don't be afraid to take the title off and remember who you are underneath.